Hello, everyone. My name is Udayan Mitra. I'm publisher at HarperCollins. A great pleasure to join you today for this very special session with the one and only Siddharth Dhanvant Shanghvi, whose new book, which is called Loss, is just out. And we're going to spend the next 15-20 minutes talking about various things that have to do with the book. But firstly, Siddharth, congratulations. And please allow me 2 minutes to give our viewers and listeners a quick introduction to you. Not that you need one, but just so that everybody's clued in, and I like doing these things. So why not? So Siddharth is, quite simply one of the most wonderful writers. It's our privilege to have as readers. He's one of the great contemporary writers of life experience. Accolades and love have been showered on him as a writer from not only from India, but from across the world. But I think Amy Tan might have said it best, and she said this recently. Everything Siddharth does is magical. Everything he writes is an emotional experience. That, I think, just about sums it up. In the last about 1.5 decades, we've had 3 books from him. The wonderful novels, The Last Song of Dusk and The Lost Flamingos of Bombay, and then the fable, The Rabbit and the Squirrel. And now comes Loss, which is his first work of nonfiction and his first book with HarperCollins India. This is a book that explores at a very personal level death, grief, loneliness, but also life, its learnings, memories. It's an extraordinary book. Those of you who have had the good fortune to already get yourself a copy and read it know how extraordinary it is. Those of you who haven't, I envy you, because you're going to discover a wonderful work of literature as soon as you can get yourself a copy. Again, if I may quote Amy Tan, it is simply told and ocean bottom deep, lyrical and clear-eyed. Very proud moment for us at HarperCollins India to have published Loss. It's just out for readers to get a copy of. Siddharth, I first wanted to ask you, and I can't resist showing the book again. How does it feel to have the book out for? It's been such a long journey this year to get this book out to readers. For finally to have the book out there for readers to be able to hold a copy for themselves, for you to hold a copy.
Well, first of all, Udayan, I must really bow before you and the entire team at HarperCollins, Ananth, Akriti, Aman, yourself, Bonitha, for bringing this book to life. I think authors very easily become ambassadors of their work and emissaries of their work. And it's easily forgotten the extraordinary teams of people that, midwife a book into existence. So really, this book wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for you. You also named this book. So you have a very direct, I don't know how many other titles in your vast table of authors you might have named, but I feel very lucky that this book carries a very personal imprint from you. And to circle back to your original question, it feels incredible, in a society, in a world where there has been so much profound suffering. The images that continue to haunt me, that come to mind, are of the migrant workers, the workers, who we had treated so badly, all of us, middle-class Indians, living in urban India, living in urban cities, being a direct beneficiary of their services. So in a sense, to connect to the publication of a book seems, an absurd level of privilege, absurd good luck to be first alive to be publishing a book. So I want to bear in mind, I want to hold in balance what is at hand, what is going on as we continue to talk about to loss. So that's where I'm at presently.
Right.
I'm very happy and I'm very excited and very grateful that the book is out there and that the few people who've read it have embraced it with the intention that it was written with, which was that it was a community book. It was a book that I hope people would take to heart to read about their own loss, not just mine.
If I can just ask you to amplify on that a little bit. So how did the idea of writing laws, so it's, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's a trio of essays, three essays on three people who were very close to Siddharth, all of whom he lost, his father, his mother, and his canine companion, Bruschetta. And there's also a photo essay entitled The House Next Door. That is what makes up the book. How did you think of this book? What was your, when you were conceptualizing it, did you think of it as a memoir of grief? How did you, what were your thoughts around it?
Well, we can circle back to our original idea. You know, you had so graciously privileged me with a visit at my home in Bombay, and the original conversation was to put together a collection of previously published essays.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what I was working on at the residency in Italy. When I realized that there was a sort of slightly phony quality to them or inconvenient quality,
Mm,
you know, just because I had been lucky enough to be approached by a publisher like yourself, I could just sort of put together something quite easily. So if
mm,
you remember, you know, we had gone through that entire exercise of putting all those essays together when I called you up and I said, you know, then I can't do this. It doesn't feel authentic. And then you very graciously had stepped in and said, okay, so let's rethink, you know, what are the principal essays you wanted to
mm.
hold to. And within that was the essay on my dad, on losing my
Right.
dad. And that I really never thought I was ever going to publish. I had sent it to Amitabh Bachchan uh,
Mm,
into 2018. He sometimes very graciously offers to read some of my work, and I
right.
have a lot of respect for him, for his lineage. He's a son of Dr. Harivansh Rai Bachchan, and his own legend is, I mean, really requires no introduction. He then approached me and said, you know, do you mind, Siddharth, if I publish it on my blog? And I said, sure. And the extraordinary response I had to that essay when it went on
Yeah.
Mr. Bachchan's blog
Yeah.
was of all these people all across India who reached out and said, oh, you know, I lost my mother, oh, I lost my father, I lost my child. And it made me think more deeply about why was there this outpouring? You know,
Mm,
what
mm,
made all of these people connect to it? On some levels, you could say, oh, you know, people felt sympathy for you or felt empathy for you and for your loss. But if you kind of unpack that a little bit, it's also about the fact that
mm.
in India, death is ritualized. You know, there's the chotha, there's what white will you wear, you know, which
Yes.
relatives have shown up,
Yeah.
you know, which friends did. So the narrative really becomes more social, more sociological than what it really is, which is that death is an incredible cosmic event for the person who has passed on, but
Mhm.
it's also a transformative event for the ones who are left living. So I think that's what you know, perhaps people were tapping into at that point of time and reaching out with that feeling. So I wanted to make a book with the intention that people could reflect on their own losses in the reading of mine. Toni Morrison talks about how a novel is a collaborative enterprise, that, you know, a
Mm.
writer brings the clues and then there's the chorus which fills in, you know, and that's how the entire church fills with music.
Right.
That's what I had thought of also with loss, that I wanted to present the clues of my life, my losses,
Mhm,
but then
mhm.
allow the reader to have her own special private relationship with the book and with what it is that she has endured.
Right. It's, I mean, we're getting many reactions. The book has been out for 2 or 3 days now, but from early readers, we are getting some of the same reactions again. I mean, it's just overpowering for some people. There is just an essential emotional connect for a lot of people. And that is because, I mean, obviously, I mean, death is something that is a part of all of our lives.
Mhm.
And it defines life in a way, uh, and but life does go on, and the memories do sustain, and that is, I think that's one of the that has always been one of my main takeaways from loss. I've of course read it multiple times, and it's just very, very powerful in that way. I just wanted to stress that point again. Just towards the end of the essay on bruschetta, you have this line saying, And so now this might be my life's work to learn how to die.
Mhm.
Is that what you would say loss might be about? I mean, I'm using the quote marks intentionally because loss is not just about one thing. It's when you read the book, readers, you'll understand that it's about a multiplicity of things. But is that what is one of the core themes of loss, about learning how to die and therefore perhaps learning how to live?
Well, thank you for that profound observation. You know, the palliative care physician and he used to run on hospice, B.J. Miller, talks about how death is what gives life its preciousness. You know, it's the sort of antipode in a sense that allows us to live urgently, live immediately, live more fully when we are aware of how special and how short our time really is.
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to say what the book is about or what, you know, my relationship with it is, because in a sense, it's such a personal thing for the
Mm,
reader.
mm,
You know,
mm.
so for me to say, oh, this is what it's about, or this is one of the things it's about, I would jump into that conversation and say that the book is also about friendship. You know, the kind of
Yes,
friendship that we
indeed,
have with a
indeed.
pet,
Mm,
you
mm,
know, and the fact that we don't dignify the loss of a dog or any pet in the same
mm.
way that we do when we lose, you know, a human companion. I
That's
think,
right.
wasn't it Amy Sedaris who said that losing a dog is a much greater shock or a much greater
Mm.
loss because you're not pretending that you had liked them as you would with you know, human beings.
That's right.
So
That's
yes, you
right.
know, it is to become death's disciple. It is to learn to see, you know, what are the ways with which you can plan a more elegant exit for yourself if you're
Mm,
allowed that.
mm,
For me, very specifically to ground this conversation into uh, practical and real terms, during
mm,
the pandemic, I wanted very much to um, kind of reach out to a lot of the people I may have possibly wronged. And I wrote them all apology notes.
mm,
I think it's partly for the feeling that I had for them, continue to have, even if I hadn't spoken to them in years, but also because I realized that a clean death is exemplified by a clean life. You know, the
mhm.
founder of Mukti Bhavan in Banaras
Right.
talks about
Mm,
how one of the most essential learnings he gleaned from watching 12,500 people die before his eyes was to finish your incomplete business while you're still alive. And partly that was what writing loss was kind of
mm,
recognizing what incomplete business is there, even if it was for the deceased, even if it
mm,
was for those people who are not there, but recognizing that their spirits perhaps might bear witness to the act of writing. And as you know, writing has a sort of slightly incantory feel. You know, it's almost as if you can summon people back. You know, that's what magic spells were.
indeed.
You
Indeed.
could kind
Mm,
of
mm,
draw them back.
mm,
And so that's what they really were. They were offerings of appreciation to my parents. They were offerings of apology. They were offerings of celebration. All of that and more. So in addition to the thing that you very astutely and gently penciled out, it was also all of those things, and especially friendship. The friendship I had with my mother, you know, the singularity of her mind, her ability for gossip, her
yes.
wisdom, her incredible genius for bearing her pain.
Mm.
All of those things and more is perhaps what loss is about.
Yes, I just quick thing that I do want to add is that I mean, this is a book about that has to do with grief, with death, with with coping. But it is also, I mean, because it has to do with memories. It is also sometimes just hilariously funny. And there is, and that's very Siddharth. I mean, those of you who have read and loved his books know that he has this wicked sense of humor. And there's this one passage that has to do with, I won't give it away, please read the book. There is a passage about his mother and her massager, which I just can't get over.
A
So
vibrator.
Yeah, you want to tell readers a little bit about that? I can't because I'm just going to burst out laughing.
So, my mother had sort of slightly diminished filter. She was disabled, and towards the last years of her life was spent entirely in a bed. And I was a student in California, and she called me and she said, Siddharth, I'd like you to get me a vibrator. And I was scandalized. I was 22. And I called up my sister and I said, there's something wrong with our mother because she's just told me that when I come back in December, I should get her a vibrator. What's going on? Yeah. And so my sister said, calm down. She's been watching too many of those home shopping network things on television. And I think what she means by vibrator is a massager. So because she was disabled, she needed, things to kind of alleviate her pain because she was she had chronic pain. But all of this kind of then landed up when I had published The Last Song of Dusk, and I was this young, ridiculous person who had accidentally come into the good fortune of publishing a publicly successful book. And as a result of this, I started to do things that were completely out of my nature, which was like to go out for dinner parties and to present myself. The kind of young person's affectations that you take on, thinking where you confuse your success as a real thing, when all of us know that success is just something that you can bear witness to even when it's happening to you. So there was a dinner party and it was all very posh and all these important people had come and there was an ambassador and so forth. And we were sitting down for a meal when there's this bellowing shriek that comes from my mother's room, which goes, "Where is my vibrator?" And so all these sort of elegant editors and publishers and all of them sitting there, and the silence was god awful. The silence was like, where have we come?
Yeah.
And I wish I had realized that even in that moment, my mother was making the most beautiful caution against the fraudulence of a dinner party. Even in that broken moment of humor, she was still reminding me what a ridiculous thing it is to sit with a bunch of people you don't really know or particularly care about and have a meal. It might be, a rite of civil society and of passage, but I'm a writer, I'm supposed to be in my own world with my own books.
Right.
So I wish I had taken her caution to heart at that point of time. And so that was my mother's vibrator story.
Yeah, that was her way of summing it up, and it just, for anyone who reads,
never again. There will never be a dinner party at my house.
I know, yes. One of the other aspects of loss, which I have to talk about, is so these things, sentences that you can pull out and which you will remember forever as readers. One is right there on the back cover of the book. I don't know if you could read it there. This says, "Grief is not a record of what has been lost, but of who has been loved." And that is, of course, it's profound. What else would you expect from Siddharth? But it is just, in that one sentence, it sums up so much of life experience and sums up how we cope with someone's passing and what it actually does to us. And that's, in many ways, that's the essence of the book, as in the memories that stay, the memories that then keep making up the person who's gone again and again in our minds, and that stays with us and it remakes us as a person. That was one of my takeaways from the book, that it's not to say in a simple or simplistic way that life goes on. We've heard that a million times. But how does life go on? It is not an entirely happy process. It's a very painful process because a lot of the memories are painful. The person is gone forever. But life does go on. You want to just tell us your thoughts about that? If you have any additional thoughts on that?
Sure. I remember very distinctly my godmother Saraswati Devi telling me that when her own mother passed away, she realized that her mother had dropped her form and suddenly she was formless and therefore everywhere. And I'd always found that a little difficult to believe, because everyone says, oh, now, they're everywhere, they're next to you, and you just think, oh, you're trying to comfort me
Right.
with lies. But it was very true when my mother passed away, so much so that one of the things that she often did in the last years of her life, because she couldn't get out of her room, was she had a portable stove that she would bring into the room, and she would get things made, and she would make things herself and send tiffins for her friends, send tiffins for people she cared about, people who were sick. Obviously, there were people she knew. And after she passed away, in the next few days, that was the only thing that was going through my mind. Thinking, oh, I have to make a meal and I have to send it to so-and-so. This one has, sick with, this one has got cancer, and I should make some khichdi and curry and send. And I realized that that's what it was. She had dropped her body, and she was now sitting around and giving me instructions in a formless way. And I remember a moment where I very clearly, and I said, no, I don't think I want to do that. I'm not a tiffin making kind of person. So I know that you could do it in your life, and that was what made you extraordinary. But my tiffins will be letters, and my tiffins will be books, and my tiffins will be essays that I will send out.
So wonderful.
And when I had that conversation with her, she just, at one point of time, she just moved. She realized that, okay, I have had to say what I have had to say to my children when I was embodied, and now I must give up the instruction. So if anybody finds some faith and belief, I know that, that they can draw from that, the sense of the disembodied giving you presence all the time in gentle, beautiful ways, which there is no proof for, which there is no way for me to ratify and give you empirically verifiable studies to say that this happens, except that if you are sentient, you are aware of it in your bones, in your blood. And that for me is the only proof that I really care about.
Absolutely. And of course, it'll work in different ways for different people and in different circumstances. So, but yes, indeed. Now, as it happens, we have published Loss in what is surely the most difficult year that any of us will live through, hopefully. I hope it doesn't get any worse than this. The year of the pandemic, it's been a year of isolation, of uncertainty, of fear, of grief, of course, of losing many people close to us. Would you say that the book has taken on a new layer of meaning since we have published it at these times? When we read it now, I read the book again after I got my first printed copy, and it seemed to resonate as much as before, but possibly even more than before. It's a time when a lot of us are in need of solace and of having literature speak to us as well. As we're desperately trying to make sense of what's going on around us. Any thoughts on this? So you did mention, sorry, you did mention earlier about a community of readers that the book is going out to. So,
well, very specifically, my 22-year-old nephew Abhishek was telling me the other day about how terrible he feels for some of his young friends who have COVID, and he was trying to put this into context of this young man who was with him in college at GLC in Bombay, who had lost his father, and who himself, this young man, had come through COVID and had to go for his final year law exams. So somehow that image of a young person who probably was thinking that, when I get done with my college exams, I'm going to go out drinking, I'm going to go out, out into the world, I'm going to embrace my new job, my new role as a lawyer or whatever, only to have himself thinking about death, thinking about the end of life, thinking about, what if this happens to him? What if this happens to his sister, mother? So that perilousness, for sure. And I remember that, earlier in the year, the book was supposed to come out, I think around January or February, and I wanted to edit it. But at that time, a very dear friend lost his dog. And I thought, no. I said, yes, I may want to edit it. I may want to, continue tinkering with it. But I realized that this was a community book. I wanted to give that friend who had lost his dog that book to say, that I can be with you very quietly, bearing witness to what you have gone through. I cannot make your pain less. I cannot help you heal, but I can let you know that I am bearing witness with you. So I did it also for that friend. And that's where it further ratified that this was a community book. This wasn't just, kind of a posturing, a kind of a writer having, some kind of an epiphany and saying, oh my God, this is what it is and you're all going to die and this is how terrible it is. It had to be deeper. The subject matter was such that unless and until it didn't include everyone who read it and didn't console or give insight to the person who gave it some time, it would not have been a meaningful exercise for me, regardless of the pandemic.
Indeed.
There's a pandemic of suffering at all points of time, where all...
Very true. We've talked about this. Yes, indeed.
It's a constant thing. What the pandemic has done is it's just put the microscope on how short our lives really are and how to hold that in balance. So how lucky that this book is able to partner with the reader's journey at a very delicate moment in time and history.
Siddharth, so this is your first book of nonfiction. Now, a question that immediately comes to mind, because I'm such a great admirer of your two novels. Did you ever think of casting this as fiction? Was that ever a thought? And related question: do you think it was additionally painful, difficult to look at yourself into the lives of those very close to you without the protection of artifice that fiction allows?
If a book is not difficult, if it doesn't have questions I want to answer and challenges I want to resolve, I don't want to write that kind of a book. So yes, of course, this was a book that was not easy to write, but how much luckier and braver I am for having written it, for having served its integrity and its essential questions. I do want to very briefly segue from your question and honor the three people who really brought it into existence. One is obviously you, Udayan, for giving it the kind of, and I wish that there would be other readers and particularly other editors and publishers who would be listening in to see what you really did was you created a climate for book to come fully formed by not interfering, by not expecting the author to do things. We signed a contract for a completely different book, which was a collection of my previously published nonfiction. And then you let me drive this into this space where I could create loss. So for that, I am in your debt for life. And then the two other editors who allowed me to think it through more deeply. One is Mark De Silva, who's formerly a columnist with the New York Times and himself the author of two beautiful books, and Bron Sibri, who lives out in Perth and who's also a critic and writer. And collectively, the three of you made what was essentially a very difficult task an aesthetic one. Because once you have the bones of a story, once you have the bones of this anguish, you don't want to give it to somebody. You don't want to give it to a reader saying, oh, look at me, this is so terrible. These awful things happen to me. You want to be able to make an aesthetic intervention. And that's what I think collectively the three of you did, which is what brought this book its final shape. So I'm indebted to Bron, I'm indebted to Mark, and I'm indebted to you. So, I'm sorry I'm branching out from your original question, but it seemed really important for me to just thank you when I have you.
No, thank you so much. I wanted to, those of you who still, if you haven't seen the book, this is the book. You can also make out from I'm holding it next to my head, so you can see the size, and that is how thick it is. So, small, spare, understated, elegant, stark. Your thoughts on the design? This is a book of life experience. It's about death. It could have been 3,000 pages long, but it's not. It is a small book, and it's as powerful a book as any of us will read this year, at least. The design goes with that, I am sure. What are your thoughts on that?
So, Bonita Vaz, who is an absolute genius, came to see me in Goa about the book and about the book design when we were kind of a year into the contract. And at the time I was serving at an arts foundation, and she knew my love for art books. And she knew my love for small books, particularly after I'd written Rabbit and Squirrel, the economy, concision, the brevity of something like that. And how powerful it is, when you say something in very little. And she just jumped with it. She just read it, she understood it, and she created this. I just left the clues at her feet. And then with great aplomb and with great intuition and grace, that she created this beautiful object. I don't think this book would read as powerfully if it wasn't for the influence of her simplicity over it.
Indeed, indeed. Finally, I wanted to ask you about the photo essay that, so the house next door, which is, I'm just going to show people pages from it. So that's what it looks like. So this is a visual essay that is part of the book, that is in between two of the prose essays. And so the book actually comprises 4 essays, 3 of which are in prose and 1 is a photographic essay. Now, Siddharth, for those of you who might not know, is a very accomplished photographer. And these are selections from his past work, obviously. Some of them feature the people that he's talking about in the book. How do you think the photographs blend into the larger narrative? Is it an alternate? Is it a sort of a parallel story that's being told? Or do they complement the prose? How does it work?
So the photographs were shot between 2008 and 2011, and then they were shown at various galleries in Vadera in Delhi, Gallery Contrast in Stockholm. So there was a space for them that they had a life of their own. When I wrote these essays and I look back and saying, I had in a sense already been working on this book, and that perhaps the photographs were the first essay. What I realized is that the instrument will change. You can work with a camera, you can work with your pen, you can work with video, but the impetus to tell stories and to tell them with fullness and with rigor was always there. So even before you and I met and discussed a book, these photographs had existed, and they were the basis for Lost. So while we may give them a cursory mention in a larger conversation, because this is really a conversation about the writing, they had become the foundation stone on which the language had then fleshed itself out. They also become very valuable clues for the reader to kind of comprehend, to kind of put an image for my father if they want to. But they're just very isolated, very gentle, solitary photographs, and therefore I think that they add to the story. Really, as I said, as the founding essay.
That's where it all started, really. As far as the book as it stands now, that was the taking off point, actually. Yes, I think that's all we have time for. If you'll allow me, I just wanted to say something at the end. As an editor, it's been because it's been such a special experience, and I've been in publishing for 2.5 decades. This has been one of the most memorable experiences of my life as an editor. So, I mean, as you might imagine, as an editor, I read a lot. I reread a lot. I reread versions of manuscripts. I see books through proofs. Many stages of editing, right through to press. And I've read Lost so many times, I've lost count. Each time, and I'm not exaggerating, each time, it's been a thrill of new discovery, of remembering that wonderful turn of phrase that is going to come on the next page. I know it's going to come. a fresh amazement at how beautifully a thought is captured or expressed. Loss is a rare book. I mean, it's very rarely do we find writing of this quality, of this kind of accomplishment, and yet so understated and so powerful. It's a book that will stay with you for years. It'll continue to reveal its secrets. Like I said at the beginning, those of you who haven't read it yet, I envy you. Read it now for the first time. And thank you, Siddharth, for giving us Loss.
Udayan, thank you so much. Just working with you has been an absolute pleasure, a privilege, and great joy. I'm so happy to have you as the biggest champion and such a great friend to Loss. Thank you, and thank you to everyone at HarperCollins. Thank you.